Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Brahmanandam Param Sukhadam Kevalam Jnanam Murtim Dvandvatitam Gagana Sadrisham Tattvamasya Lakshyam Ekam Nityam Vimalamachalam Sarvadhi Sakshi Bhutam Bhavatitam Trigunarahitam Sadgurum Tam Namami. Om. Adorations to Brahman, the giver of supreme bliss, embodiment of pure consciousness, one without a second, vast as the ether, infinite, eternal, beyond the three gunas and their modifications, the supreme preceptor. Yoga Vasistha in Upashama Prakarana, and this mystic episode of Bali continues. Just to give you a brief. Demon King Bali started with demon so that you are sure that the attainment that he receives is the absolute. Make a good person enlightened, that is what it makes. But when the episode covers from a demon level to the highest, it has given a complete picture. Otherwise, you will be always left with doubt. That is, spiritual teaching helps only those who are not demons. So, Bali, following the storyline, ruled over his kingdom, enjoyed immense power for a long time. But ultimately he became bored by his power and glory, the same thing every day. So he began to reflect, and in that state of mind, he began to recall what he had received from his own father. His father was a spiritual person, Virochana, who had, while he was still very young, Virochana had told him about the goal of life, attainment of God realization, being free from mala, gross impurities, vikshepa, distractions, avarana, the veil of illusion, all that he has taught. But in his young age, all the teaching he had just kept in his own desk in the unconscious. And he himself had forgotten all about it. I'm just giving you a rhetorical way to understand that all good things you learn, they are kept in your unconscious. And when you become ready for utilizing it, the door opens. And what is unconscious comes into your memory. You are recollecting. You are already recollected. But now we are recollecting. Now, as a result of the recollection, Bali continues to reflect upon. He's applying all that he had recollected, how to use it in the daily life, how to bring it into practice. And as I have already given to you previous day, that he brought out within his mind a whole mathematical plan of being a spiritual aspirant. Half of the time to be given to Guru. The other half has to go to something else. A summarized way, I can tell you what it means. If you become deeply involved on a spiritual path, integral yoga enters in the stream of your life. Actions become karma yoga. Your sentiments, feelings, they follow the path of bhakti, devotion. Whenever your heart flutters with tender sentiment, you do not go after the construction of the nose of the person around you. Your mind goes after God's presence. What is the source of love, source of tenderness? God is being loved through all forms of sentiments. And not a single sentiment is perfect unless it allows you to feel the presence of God. Every ray of the sun must remind you of the presence of the sun. Every experience of tender feeling, of any degree of love, must beckon your soul to the ultimate goal of that love. But easily said, but that's the great project of everyone's life. First point, you can't live without love. You are, in every stage, you want to love as be loved. But if you are growing up, when you develop the idea of loving everybody, you understand that from behind your ego, God within you is giving you, making you a channel of tenderness. And when you experience love from others, you realize that your good feelings in your heart has drawn, is bringing God's love through others around you. So, you begin to love your inner self while experiencing tenderness, and you begin to love God in others. So love is inside, love is outside. You have no choice but to just love. Lose yourself. I've extended that. That's so action, karma yoga. Feelings must flow in that direction of discovering profound love and willing to be a channel in the hands of God. Not to recognize look how great am I. Look my history, how I was and what I did. All the business I worked upon. I'm not discouraging you for a biography. But the deeper understanding that all this wonder that has happened through your personality, who is the source? God, not your ego. Your ego doesn't know anything. It's just waiting to say, this is mine. Again, the message is not that you suddenly strip yourself of your ego, but allow that ego to be polished in a spiritual way so that it does not obstruct your view of God. Allow your ego to be there with the virtue of humility. The more advanced you are, more humility expresses through your ego. And that ego is completely in harmony with God's will. So that will aspect that allows your ego to become humble. This whole movement is called Raj Yoga, Dhyan Yoga. Purifying your will, not ego's will, God's will. And that ego's will, you live by ego's will because you are sick, mentally sick. That's the definition of health in scriptures. But as you turn to God's will, now you are healthy. Swasthya. Swa is the self. Stha, you are abiding in it. That's the Sanskrit word for health. And of course, the final level, the understanding aspect, that is an act of your intellect. But intellect works in two ways, intellectual, intuitional. Intuitional is the healthy aspect of intellect. Intellectual is unhealthy state. Unhealthy, but it's a stage that must grow, allow you to grow out of it. Intellectual data, when you are listening to all that, is an intellectual exercise. But when you begin to reflect upon it and assimilate it in your life, then you are moving towards, you are digesting theory, turning it into practice, and behind this process is intuitional process. Now it occurs in a spontaneous manner. There is no effort involved. Intellectual knowledge requires a lot of effort. Put your finger here on your, I'm talking about your website. Gather a lot of intellectual data. Intuitional is a spontaneous. But that again, it's a progressive movement. How much insight we will have. See, coming to intuitional level doesn't mean in one step. You begin to discover progress of insight in your personality. Insight into what is wealth. I should develop virtuous qualities. That is more greater than what wealth can do to me. Your insight goes on growing. As insight goes on growing, that process becomes vichar. You go on inquiring into, go on developing and understanding where is happiness, who am I. Coming to the highest level, jnana movement, intuitional knowledge, that's the climax of soul's fulfilling the highest purpose. Through jnana, the soul realizes, I am not the body, mind, intellect. The whole world is a mental projection. I am, that am I. Aham Brahmasmi. That I am is the absolute reality, known as Aham in Sanskrit language. Humorously, I say that Aham has gone to mayhem. That Aham has become mixed up with so many illusions that you are never fulfilled. Hardly you begin to relax, suddenly some news comes. I don't want to give you bigger. and your arm that was feeling so relaxed now start jumping. So arm is always in a mayhem. Aham is in the illusion of me and mine. But cure it by saying all is divine. Neither me nor mine. That type of wisdom, when becomes perfectly fixed, that's the goal of life. You live through the body, look at the world, follow all practical realities, but all your experience is just like as if you are dreaming, knowing that it is a dream. In other words, you are not shaken internally, no matter how things happen. Just like no matter how many things come in your iPad, all that you do is sit down and wait, watch. You are not shaken by that. Unless you are too stupid. You stoop to be deluded. That's called stupidity. Just as a white cloth can be easily colored when dipped into dye, in the same way the purified mind is easily colored by the teachings of the scriptures. So if you are following this plan of integral yoga, now you are developing qualifications that enable you to deserve for attaining knowledge. Simple way of saying, if you don't have the qualifications for being a spiritual aspirant, then you are as if putting on a colorful cloth, and more crudely, a very black or whatever, very deep color cloth. And then you come to the spiritual teacher, color me gold. Your cloth has to be clear in order to receive higher color into it. Be receptive. All these scriptures go on using many similes and high literary drama. Just as in preparing sweet preserve, the fruit is allowed to mellow by heat until the honey or sugar homogeneously permeates the fruit. Another simile is given, like you make a sweet preserve. I'll give you the example of the waffle. First, allow your mind to be well baked, well disciplined, and then bring in divine love. Inundates the whole mind. And you couldn't get a waffle any better than that. In the same way, the mind must be treated with spiritual inquiry and meditation until the bliss of Brahman permeates it thoroughly. Bliss of Brahman is that honey, syrup. When the self is thus glimpsed, one becomes desireless. And the mind becomes inundated by joyousness. When desirelessness grows, the vision of the self grows to its fullness, like the waxing moon. Desirelessness is again progressive movement. As your desires for the world, desires for illusions begin to diminish, the vision of bliss is like moon. The vision of God is like moon. That moon begins to wax in the firmament of your heart. Your heart becomes like the sky. And joyousness begins to grow more and more. Therefore, the word Chandra is used constantly to remind Ramachandra, Krishna Chandra. Chandra, moon. But that doesn't have anything to do with geographical moon. Here the moon is absolute joy, it's not a reflected light. All virtuous deeds in the form of performance of sacrifices, visiting pilgrimage centers, austerities of various types, acts of charity and so forth, give rise to the pleasures of the senses alone. The statement is tough for the masses. But behind the statement, there is one little point. If you are going into all the pilgrimage, etc., without an internal aspiration, without the sensitivity for satsanga, good association, then it is just an illusion in your mind. And from a broad point of view, no matter how illusory, any good movement you have done is good for you. But Yoga Vasistha are not satisfied with little good. So Yoga Vasistha scolds you in spite of all that. If you're feeling, you are not really becoming qualitative in your life, but all that you are thinking of, how can I gain virtuous, meritorious deeds? How can I have a darshan of God? And some experience you will have in temples, now you will hold it on and go on telling people, even 6 years later, 8 years later, how you sat in a temple. And amazingly, the deity looked at you. But all this time, that's the only thing you remember. Deity looked at you. What did you do? Did you communicate with him? Did you realize him? But that doesn't occur in the mind. Some experience, and the mind becomes so fascinated, holds on to those data. And many people consider that's spirituality. If you are a spiritual person, tell me, what are the things you have experienced? All that has its own purpose, but I'm talking about from a very advanced level. Because all that can keep your mind distracted from the goal. The goal is not to have collection of spiritual data in your mind, but to have your real experience. So there is saying, Man changa ta katvat me ganga. If your mind has become free of burden caused by your ego, free of anger, hate, etc., your mind has become purified. Even while you are in your bathtub, as if you are in the Ganges water, close to the source of the Ganges in the Himalayas. And that as if is more effective. You are gaining a greater merit right at home than if you had gone to the Ganges, come back with rheumatic problems. Because Ganges water is very cold. Shaken up all your nervous system and take nearly 4 or 5 months to recover from it. I'm not discouraging you. But the moral is, yes, go to the pilgrimage, but try to have your heart open to love of God. So keep that focus, but not just the focus on many details, you see. Picking up little shell, picking up to bring certain sacred objects, collecting them. And all spiritual teachings, all that you do, collect lots of literature. If the pilgrimage centers are providing you, collect so many things. You come back with a whole box of things. But with a calm and relaxed mind, if you are listening to spiritual teachings, even for a shorter duration, you have gained a lot about what your goal is, what God is, than by going long distances and putting yourself into so much turmoil. You have to figure that out. That's what Yoga Vasistha is saying. All virtuous deeds in the form of performances of sacrifices, visiting pilgrimage centers, austerities of various types, acts of charity, and so forth, give rise to the pleasures of the senses alone. But true bliss can be experienced only when a person develops insight into the fact that happiness that is perceived in the objects does not belong to the objects, but proceeds from the self alone. That point if you began with my talk, if you were finding joyousness coming from you, it's not coming from your body, or it's coming from God. If joyousness comes from people around you, that also is coming from God. If joyousness is coming from cauliflower, potatoes, that also comes from God. And to understand simple point, the reality behind the entire universe, all the objects of pleasure, reality behind all that is Brahman, pure consciousness. Just like you dream, a lot of drama goes on in your dream. But the reality behind your entire dream is just simple consciousness. And that absolute consciousness is Brahman, Prajnanam Brahma. By turning away from the pleasures of the senses, one advances in spiritual inquiry. Spiritual inquiry is, when you hear the word, it simply implies start thinking. And thinking term itself gives your mind a kind of a stressful movement. But everything begins in a limited way, but as you advance, it becomes more profounder. Inquiry it should become as natural. If you are hungry, you are open to receiving food. And if you are well cultured, you are open to receiving nutritional food. So, the more hungrier you are, greater is your joy in getting. Similarly, experiencing the world with that type of attitude, that happiness comes from God, now we become hungry for that joy. Now in that process of hunger, your mind goes on figuring out how am I to secure it. And that movement of the mind is spontaneous, not stressful. By spiritual inquiry, one leads one's dispassion to its fullest bloom. All these quickly stated statements. Are you practicing inquiry, spiritual inquiry in an effective way? Answer is, if you are developing dispassion. Dispassion means internally a mature understanding that you are not secure on the basis of external possessions, and you are not really being led to satisfaction because of worldly pleasures. No matter how much pleasure, you will not be fulfilled. So far you have not been fulfilled. How far? to most people, they look at their personality when they were born, and so it is within 100 years. In other areas, my human mind is very scientific. But you think of yourself, science moves away. How can you entertain the idea that you are only 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old? Those who are less are not be upset. There could be limit. You existed before your body was born. And countless bodies have gone on. You cannot give a time period to your personality. Now turning to the dispassion, that internal maturity of understanding begins to develop. The understanding that real security is not on the basis of becoming rich, becoming famous, being surrounded by loving children and grandchildren. All that is perfectly okay in their own place, but you are not gaining the goal. The goal comes if you're in the midst of all that you do, if you are allowing your heart to become like the sky and your divine love in your heart waxes, if your heart has a fulfilling experience, that is now giving you real success in your life. That type of understanding is vairagya. Movement towards that internal goal, realizing God, versus all temptations of the world. And you are not shaken by it. Quickly said, but in order to come to that state, it's a progressive movement. You begin to discover why you are shaken by little things, and now you are mature by your meditation, etc., and you have outgrown it. And the process goes on until you come to a state when nothing of the world you don't view anything of this world to have a realistic or effective nature. In other words, the entire world, just like when you wake up, not a needle point of the dreamland is secured by you. If you are a person of real estate, in your dream you bought acres and acres of land. Good news, 100 acres. But by the time you're enjoying it, you wake up. Not a needle point has come to. So all you are experiencing through your mind and senses, not a needle point can be secured. Because all these experiences are the magical, illusory appearances created by mental projections. Your mind is playing the game. Your nervous system is your iPad. Figure that out. All this experience of the world is the magic show of a little coconut head. Now, Vairagya comes in two stages, Vairagya, dispassion. Early stage, you begin to understand that your goal is not eat, drink, be merry. Your goal is to be healthy, inwardly strong, to follow the spiritual path, to ascend the ladder of enlightenment. That movement is your goal. In this process, Vairagya that you develop is early stage of Vairagya. The final stage of Vairagya is an absolute awakening, just like you wake up from your dream and the entire dream vanishes. Or it doesn't matter, even while the dream continues, you are awake, you knowing that nothing is real. That's a state of enlightenment. But I am leading you to understand, the scriptures speak about bhava pratyaya, pratyaya bhava. All experiences that you have in your life are defined by your mental projections, thought waves of your mind. They act like whirlpools. Each thought wave is just like putting a finger into a big pad. And it googles out lots of things. The entire life is nothing but this drama of your mind. Now, you have two ways to go. Look forward to a better setup of your personality, your karma, your near and dear ones. Improve your karma and improve your worldly existence. But that is childish, that is stupidity. Yes. The goal is move away, wake up from your dream, let the whole dream drop. For easier understanding, if you are watching a cinema show, two ways you can entertain your mind. One, waiting to see. The show brings out some amazingly joyous scene. Wait for it. It will give you thrill all over. But then, fortunately, unfortunately, the drama is over. So go back home, wait for similar or the same drama to enjoy it. In other words, you are looking for fulfillment in the realm of projections. That's one stage. The goal is be detached from the entire projection and discover screen alone is the reality. every projected image that you enjoyed, every story that you followed, behind was screen that was absolutely uninvolved with everything. The soul within you is the screen. And it is that experience transcends your mind. Mind creates the experience of gain and loss, presence and absence. That mind itself dissolves, and the screen shines on. That's called para-vairagya. When a mind has developed that type of vision, may I just melt away. A cloud has developed that vision. When the sun begins to pass through the cloud, and suppose cloud is kind of a sentimental being, and cloud looks at itself and says, oh, wonderful, calls other cloud, look, how beautifully attired I am, I'm dancing. And the cloud says, careful, you are not dancing, you are dissolving. So that's the movement of pratyaya bhav. As long as the cloud is creating the show, that is vairagya in the early stage. You are turning your attention to the world and understanding your goal is not in the world. But now your goal is not even to use the mind. The entire mind itself begins to enjoy melting away. That's the advanced vairagya. That's religion at the higher level. That's where people say, may I attain God realization. So that type of vision must develop. God realization is not a mental product, but a state where mind is not needed anymore. But even through the mind you come to a state where mind becomes waffle. The mind becomes waffle, Ganesha will eat it up. That's why he has big stomach. Dispassion and spiritual inquiry are interdependent. Just as the ocean raises the clouds and the clouds rain into the ocean, in the same way dispassion and spiritual inquiry assist each other. Simple idea, the more you are detached, the more you are internally awakened to the understanding the world is illusory, greater is your insight into who am I. The more you become disenchanted from the world, greater is your movement towards the source of all enchantment. And that source is, who am I? More vairagya, greater is your clarity of your understanding. More raga, your understanding is defective. And as dispassion and spiritual inquiry are led to maturity, one increasingly experiences the revelation of the self. So if this process goes on, dispassion and the spiritual inquiry, which brings you vivek, a discriminative understanding, the difference between self and not self. This whole process matures or climaxes into revelation of the self. O son, renounce destiny at all costs. Self-realization is not matter of fruit of karma. So don't go to an astrologer and ask for when will I attain self-realization. Turn to yourself and ask yourself, let me pursue the path, let me do the self-effort. Your self-realization is your movement, not the movement imposed on you by stars. In this glorious project, leave no stone unturned. Even if you have to grind your teeth and crumble your bones, you must continue to exercise your self-effort. Don't take it literally. This gives you a picture of how, when something is so interesting, look at the masses, when someone develops the idea of creating a sport, jumping from one hill to the other. Not just ordinarily, even to take a car and let it bounce. Once that idea has entered, nothing stops the person. He allows his whole body, everything under risk, to attain it. Follow the illustration. Success in a sport make people so much that they go beyond body, beyond ordinary energy. Why not that type of mind develop the joy of spiritual success, which turns the entire world into a sport? And you bounce from height to height until you just dive into bliss. No more bouncing. So with this I'm going to conclude. Om Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushti Vardhan Urvarukma Bandhana Mrityor Mukshiyama Mritat Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina Sarve Santu Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukha Bhag Bhavet Om Shanti Shanti. Om Namah Shivaya Om Shri Ramaya Namah Hari Om.